coalition website as well. We have a lot of PKU stories. We really are interested in seeing a lot of the other conditions have a better representation, but of course PKU is welcome as well. If you have any more questions or anything, you can feel free to email me at katebarber@everylifefoundation.org. All right, great. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Dylan.
Great. Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Dylan Simon. I'm the Newborn Screening Policy Fellow here at the Every Life Foundation. And today I'm just going to give you an update on where we stand with the Newborn Screening Saves Lives Reauthorization Act. Just a little background on newborn screening and the importance of newborn screening. It's one of the most successful public health programs we have in this country, this ability to detect early these babies who have these diseases and get them the treatment that they need when they're asymptomatic, and can really do a lot of help. And it really, newborn screening saves babies' lives. It's the easiest way to put it. It's short, concise, and has a nice part of being true. Newborn screening saves lives. And so part of that is through the federal RUSP, which is the Recommended Uniform Screening Panel. It's essentially the federal government's list of diseases. There are currently 35 on it that they recommend should be screened by every state on their individual newborn screening panels. And so on the federal level, the initial Newborn Screening Saves Lives Act was passed in 2008 as a recognition to kind of set some guidelines and help facilitate the newborn screening process in every state. Back in 2007, when this process started, only 10 states, as well as DC, required infants to be screened for all the recommended disorders. That has changed. Today, all 50 states, as well as DC, require screening for at least 31 out of the 35 diseases on the RUSP. And that's something that we're really excited about, and continually working to get the number up to 35 to have full RUSP alignment in every state. And that brings us to today's reauthorization. So the reauthorization for federal support officially expired as of September 30th. And so we are working very hard to try to pass the bill. And I'll just give you a little bit of background on the bill, kind of how we got here, and the acts that we have moving forward. So this process started earlier this year when Representative Royal Allard and Simpson introduced the Newborn Screening Saves Lives Reauthorization Act, and through committee hearings, we were able to get the bill passed in the House, which we are very excited about. However, the bill is stalled a bit in the Senate. It was introduced by Senator Hatson and Gardner. Unfortunately, it is stalled out due to an amendment from Senator Paul, which I will discuss a little bit moving forward. But here's some key bill provisions that were in the House version of the bill. It would reauthorize the HRSA grants that expand and improve the newborn screening programs, as well as help to educate parents and healthcare workers on the importance of newborn screening. As somebody who has been on a lot of state public health pages and been looking at state newborn screening programs, these brochures that the states provide to parents and to healthcare workers are really great and tend to help answer a lot of questions, and the HRSA grants are a big part of that. Another important part is that it would reauthorize the advisory committee that makes the recommendations for what diseases to add to the federal RUSP. At the moment, that committee isn't active because the reauthorization has lapsed. And in addition, there were a few little extra points that we liked at the end. It would direct the National Academy of Medicine to conduct a study on how to modernize the newborn screening program. It's always great to be looking forward and how we can do better, and so that was a nice part, as well as increased authorization funding for these programs. But as I said, we're stalled out in the Senate a bit, and that was a result of an amendment that Senator Paul introduced that would require parents to provide informed consent to store the dried blood samples taken for newborn screening. The reason that we don't support this is because it would bring newborn screening research to a halt. It has been shown in multiple state pilot studies that the general issue with getting consent to keep these dried blood spots for research is not a do parents want to do this. it's a burden of the hospitals. They don't necessarily have the time or the bandwidth or the ability to educate who they need to on how to properly ask for consent, to ask for consent. And so you often see just that question not being asked, therefore you don't get informed consent, and therefore you lose out on these dried blood spots. And the process that it would take to educate and to help the states to implement an informed consent policy for research on these dried blood spots would essentially bring research to a halt for at least 5 years and do a lot of damage in the newborn screening world, and really halt the ability to continue to add diseases to the RUSP and continue to save more lives through this program. And so that gets us to our ask is call and email your senators, let them know that you support the bill as is without the Paul amendment. If you live in Kentucky, contact Rand Paul as often as you can. But in general, email and call your senators. Leadership obviously is also great. And if you have any questions, my email is not listed here, but it is dsimon@everylifefoundation.org. I'll be happy to answer any of your questions on the issue.
Great, thank you. We're actually going to pass it over to Jenny.
I will.
Good.
Yeah.
Want to switch musical chairs? Awesome.
Get something wrong. Then you can hear me. Ooh, pictures on there. Well, hi. Very nice. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny Nieto. I'm Vice President of Federal Government Relations and Alliance Development for the California Life Sciences Association. I'm also joined here in the room today by my colleague Molly Fishman, our Director of Federal Government Relations. Thank you for the invitation to present to the group today. As many of you know, Congress is considering, has been considering for some time, legislation to address the challenges that patients are facing with affordability of drug costs. We are, just as an organization, we are concerned about patient affordability and access, and we are very concerned, however, about current proposals, specifically the international reference pricing provision that is included in the House Democrats' Bill H.R. 3. We have been talking across our organization for some time. Our membership is about 1,000 members ranging from biotechnology, pharmaceutical, medical device companies to academic and private research institutions to venture, members of the venture community and other sector service providers. And we've talked about, you know, small company, large company concerns. And we've been feeling for some time that the concept of importing foreign price controls is very concerning, in particular for small companies who are trying to develop new products, which, as most of you know, about 70% of all new drugs are being developed and marketed by small company investment. So what we did to kind of not just say that the sky is falling, we actually decided to do an economic analysis of H.R. 3, the reference pricing provisions, to really see what it would do to investment and the future of innovation of the pipeline. So thank you again for the opportunity to just present that data today. The information I'm going to share with you, we've tried to consolidate some of the information, but there is a full published study that's been released. It's been out in the world for about 2 weeks now. It's available on our website if you want to dig into the data and see more about the methodology. But again, today I'm going to kind of just show you a couple of the highlights. And no ask other than, you know, please be aware of the information, and we can talk more about what to do next. Okay, so this is just a slide showing the cover of our study. So what we did was we contracted with a organization called Vital Transformation. They are an internationally based health economics firm. They primarily do work with foreign governments, and so in terms of setting up their pricing and their analyses. So they're actually very familiar with the way that drugs are priced and marketed abroad. We commissioned this study and co-released the program, the report with Biocom, which is a regional San Diego-based association in California as well. So, oops, I forgot to click. Oh, now what have I done?
The arrows. Does that work? That little arrow.
Oh, did you load the whole study? Maybe I sent you the wrong one. That's okay. All right, well, I'll just do it verbally because I think I might have accidentally sent you the wrong deck. I'm sorry.
The arrows on the keyboard might work.
Yeah, no, they're... Okay, so basically what we did, and I'll skip ahead to this slide, is to start, we actually looked at the revenue that would be affected by the reference pricing provisions in HR 3. So in HR 3, they essentially have set up a process by which the government will look at a certain number of high-cost drugs in Part B and in Part D, and then they intend eventually to expand this pricing scheme to the entire commercial market. For the purposes of our study, we looked at the Part D spending just to get a small data set and then see what happens in California. So we looked at the Medicare Part D spending dashboard. This is something that's available publicly on CMS, and we identified the top spending drugs according to the House Ways and Means Committee majority released last year, a study that actually looked at what those prices might be with international reference pricing. So essentially looking at the top spending drugs in Medicare Part D, counting for, the number of them that would be affected under HR 3, and applying the international reference pricing figure, which is, and kind of an average, it uses a formula, but it's an average of the spend in other countries. What HR 3 then does is it also adds 20% to that number. So they take the international reference pricing, they add 20%, and then that is the ceiling point at which the secretary would be able to negotiate with manufacturers below that point. So it sets that ceiling, reference price plus 20%, that's the ceiling. We, Vital Transformation then used a database called MedTrack, which is it's a subscription database, but it is full of information about company R&D, revenue, all types of different data. And what they did was they ran the reference pricing figures through the balance sheets of all of the affected companies. So skip ahead to, this is just methodology for the study. So you're actually seeing on the slide here the full study. So it's publicly available. You can look at it more. I'm just going to try to go through it quickly. Thing, or how do I?
I can see the slide.
The whole slide, okay. So if you look at Company A on this first slide, these are all real companies. These are companies with products currently on the market selling under the Medicare Part D program. They've all been de-identified. If you have 2 free hours, you could probably go through and figure out what they were, but we thought this was important to at least share so you can see the company impact. So look at Company A. They've got 1 drug in the Medicare Part D program. You can see their Medicare Part D sales, $542 million. It then shows you what the current, or what the new revenue would be based on the reference price, again, calculated by the international reference prices. The change in their revenue, their total, and compared that to their total R&D spend in 2017. And we've got that for these top 25 companies. And you can look at a company like Company F. They have 6 assets. And so you can actually run this through the balance sheets and see where they end up. And again, I'm going to skip ahead. So this is just price impact at the firm level of just the reference price. This next analysis that we ran is actually when you apply the 20% margin back. And I can't see it on this slide, but I'm going to try to scroll this. If you look at that bottom row, the total, you can see that the change in revenue column is pretty significant when you have actually then cut the potential revenue based on those prices in Medicare Part D. We've also then done a calculation of what that percentage might be compared to the total R&D cost of those companies. Finally, this is when you expand this reference pricing to the entire commercial market. And so importantly, you can see that this would create a $71.6 billion annual revenue impact to companies currently with Part D products on the market, or a 58% reduction in their total earnings. And again, this is based on the Ways and Means Committee methodology and the Medicare spending database and the way that we understand HR 3 to work. So then we looked at the investment behavior in California over a 10-year period, and wanted to see what happens if you cut revenue for large companies by 58%. Does that have any impact on innovation and the new product pipeline? And there's going to be a lot of different slides here that you can see. Again, you can dig in more detail on the methodology, but what we found through this analysis was that without changing regulatory processes, without changing science, without actually changing payment systems, the only mechanism that this bill is really adjusting is your available revenue, available money to invest. So the next couple of slides actually show the likelihood of products coming to market based on how much is invested. And we found that there's a significant statistical relationship between the amount invested in a therapy and its likelihood of being able to come to market and being marketed. So what this slide is showing you is these are real companies. We've de-identified which companies they are, and we've instead showed them as the therapeutic area or drug category. These are 25 companies that marketed assets. These are California-based small companies that relied heavily on investment from large pharmaceutical partners. So over a 10-year period, our data showed that there were 85 companies and assets invested in by large pharmaceutical companies in California, and of those 85 over that 10-year period, 25 of them came to market. So you can look down here, and this is actually showing the correlation between the total invested and the actual revenue. Some statistical data for you. This shows it's statistically significant. What's interesting here on this slide is that, and this kind of flips the list, so the most heavily invested products are the ones that's towards the bottom. Sorry, I'm going to adjust the slide here for the folks in the room. I hope that doesn't bother anyone on the phone. And you can see that the items that are located toward the top, they had less investment, and they generally had less revenue generated from those products. So the likelihood, again, if you have a lot of investment in a therapy or therapeutic area, and you had a lot of revenue, those are going to be the most successful products. Air quotes for those on the phone. And again, this is shown to be statistically significant. What we then found is, again, there's more data here to really just emphasize the statistical significance of predicting market entry is really, really tied to the significant investment. Around $800 million is kind of where that guarantee really comes in, that you're more likely to come to market than others. Doesn't mean it changes the amount that you need to bring a product to market, it just shows the likelihood. So of those 25 therapies that came to market, these, again, are organized by their asset type. They show you how much was total investment into each of these assets. Again, these are real California companies who really brought assets to market over the last 10 years. The first column here is green because they all were brought to market. It does show their likely probability of having success, but it also then shows that they were given a green light by the investing companies as well as the innovator companies, and they did bring them to market. And again, the higher the likelihood, the higher investment, the more likelihood they are going to come to market and potentially be successful. The orange or red, depending, I've had people see it different colors. I see it as orange. Those are the therapies that we would predict under this model. Far right column, if HR 3 were in effect, instead of seeing 25 new drugs come to market over the last 10 years, you would be more likely to only see 3.
From California alone.
From California alone. Okay, so take that in. And we will email this all to you later if you want to dig in more detail. And this is important because when we included this slide, this is from a data deck released in April by IQVIA. At this point, over 70% of the total R&D pipeline in the U.S. is coming from small and emerging companies. And California, in particular, is a real leader here in this space. We have a lot of small and emerging companies in our state. So a lot of these novel therapies are coming forward out of California companies and from small and emerging companies. So 70% of the pipeline is coming through. And then furthermore, we included this data to show you also that the U.S. is the global leader in investment and in biotechnology, and our data again shows that California is about 30 to 33% of the entire marketplace. So we are very proud that California is the global leader in biotech innovation and investment, and in terms of bringing new products to market. And so this is another reason that we're so concerned about this potential impact. We also see the jobs would be affected here. Again, this shows the job growth in several states over the last couple years. California, even in the last couple of years, has had over 100% growth in the R&D jobs. The specific job code that they're using here this is based on the BLS data. So again, that's a publicly available database, but this is just for the employment code for biotech R&D. So you may be familiar with other statistics about the number of R&D jobs in California. That includes a couple different codes, but this is just that one code. This is another slide that shows the potential impact to stock holders and shares. So a cut of 58% of biopharmaceutical revenue would likely result in a reduction in excess of about $500 billion in the market capitalization of U.S. firms. So that is also pretty significant. In California, New Jersey, and New York are kind of the top states there. So I think, yeah, that's kind of the end of the slide. So I will welcome any questions or comments at this point, or I have a couple folks in the room who've heard this before. Did I miss anything? I don't know, maybe I'll go back to this one. There is a common discussion or comment that we hear a lot about what, okay, you might be cutting some innovation. You might be halting, new drug development by, a couple drugs per year. The CBO, in fact, in their partial score of HR3 has said we would lose 8 to 15 drugs over a 10-year period. Our data shows it's far more significant than that, because we are not looking at the investment behavior as being linear. We're actually showing and have that statistically significant data that shows if you have less revenue available to invest, you're going to make much more less risk averse. You're going to be more risk averse. You're not going to be investing in things that don't have a high likelihood of success, or who aren't going to require as much capital upfront, and you're going to be looking toward more return on your investment. So, some on the Hill, some stakeholders have said that they think this just means that industry is going to invest, or the communities are going to invest in things like Alzheimer's. And in fact, this data shows that's really not the case. If you're talking about a really risky therapeutic area, less likelihood of productive outcomes, less likelihood of, really an ROI, you're not going to be investing in there. And unfortunately, this data also shows that you can see a lot of these therapeutic areas like genetic disorders. Many of these or oncology, many of these are rare diseases. And unfortunately, when you have less capital and a less hospitable investment environment, you're not going to be investing in those. So we are particularly concerned as an organization that this is going to be really stifling, not only for the California innovation ecosystem, but also for the global innovation ecosystem. And ultimately, patients are going to be very at risk when they are not going to be seeing new drugs coming to market. So I will pause there.
Jane, do you want to give a quick summary of HR3 for folks that might not be as familiar with it?
So HR3 is essentially the Lower Drug Costs Now Act. It is the House Democratic legislation that's being moved through the Congress right now, championed by the Speaker, but also by other members of the Democratic delegation, Democratic caucus. The key premise of it is they're trying to lower costs, lowering list prices, and there was a provision included in the Energy and Commerce Committee mark that we are pleased with when it actually caps out-of-pocket costs for patients. We think that is critically important to do, to make sure that patients have predictability, to understand what their drug spend is going to be on an annual basis. There is no
in Medicare.
There is currently no out-of-pocket cap. So Medicare beneficiaries, especially in Part D, they don't potentially know what their drug spend is going to be over each year. So we think capping that is really important. Unfortunately, they're capping the out-of-pocket costs, but they're also then cutting the available revenue to invest in these new products by importing this international reference pricing scheme. There's many other provisions in the legislation as well, but that one is the one that we're kind of focused on.
There's also a question on the chat. Someone asked about any actions of the pharmaceutical industry at this point on HR 3.
Sorry, any actions? What does it say? Patient. Yeah, I mean, industry, the national associations, all the state associations who kind of represent industry are very concerned about HR 3. Right now, we're in an opposed position because this could be so catastrophic and devastating. Industry has been very supportive of, more of a bicameral, bipartisan process by which there are more mechanisms implemented that are going to drive down list prices in a meaningful way, drive down net prices, also drive down patient out-of-pocket costs, but not putting all that responsibility and devastation on industry's backs. We're hopeful that there could be some reforms for, the way that drugs are even priced. Some PBM transparency and reforms there would be really helpful in the way that the drug prices are negotiated would be helpful as well. So I don't know if that answers the question, but.
I have a question and also comments. And so thank you first for the presentation and for the research you guys have done. My question was, Brent Fisk with Horizon Therapeutics. We're more of a mid-sized pharmaceutical company. And have you guys looked at all, and I don't know if the data bears this out, but if there are only going to be 3 products that are viable market entries moving forward out of 25 or whatever the number was, have you looked at how that might squeeze mid-sized companies like ours out of the market? Because at that point, these technologies that are coming to the market are going to be so expensive that, we won't be able to compete with big boys when we're trying to acquire new therapies. And so it might be interesting to look at something like that. I mean, it's already a situation now where early-stage assets are incredibly expensive, especially in the rare disease space, and they're very hard to bring to market. So, our concern there is that we would be squeezed. I mean, you're either going to be an early-stage biotech startup with a very promising one of those three products, or you're going to be a big company that has the capital on hand to invest in one of those 3 products, and we would be left out.
Yeah, I think your assessment is right. We didn't, build that analysis specifically into the request of this data deck, but with the large companies, I mean, the idea that they have so much revenue is because they have products already on the market. Yeah. And they invest heavily, it's like 121, industry is investing $121 billion a year in, new drug R&D. The NIH, for example, is more like 40 of that, and that's being pretty generous. So industry is spending a lot of money investing in partnerships, licensing agreements. M&A was actually removed from this, so this is really just partnerships and licensing. But if you're a mid-sized company and you might not have any products on the market, you might have 1 or 2, maybe they're in Part B, you're still going to be affected by a squeeze on your revenue and then your ability to invest in your own pipeline or partnerships with others. So, I mean, I think it's not implicit in this, but I think you're right on the money.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I just have one more comment. I think you did an excellent job talking about HR 3. I think one of the other things I'd point out, I don't speak for the industry at all, but I think there have been provisions, the question about what the pharmaceutical industry has done. I think there have been provisions that would be a bite out of industry's pocket that they've supported. So patent settlements, the Part D restructure would significantly impact industry. I think, the position is that the industry would like to be at the table.
Right.
But if you put a 60 to 95% excise tax, if the government doesn't agree with the price of your product, that's a hard pill to swallow, no pun intended, but it is. I mean, it's something that you don't see in any other industry. So I echo the comments that you've made on the industry position. So
yeah, and there will be another study coming out either today or tomorrow that is looking at the whole U.S. So I can't share too much about it, but I do know that the data is consistent across kind of the U.S., where we would still expect to see an 88% reduction in the number of products coming to market. So that's significantly more than the 8 to 15 that CBO has proposed. And the states that are affected are pretty much the ones that you would expect. But again, those are the ones that are really driving innovation at this point. The other thing I would just note that, these are not concerns that are isolated to the, and I'm making air quotes for those on the phone, big pharmaceutical states or big innovation states. We actually led a multi-state life sciences association letter last month where we had 44 states and regional associations sign on to this letter. So even states that are small or emerging ecosystems are very concerned about this because they are currently trying to build ecosystems like the ones that we have in California, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and other places, and they're just simply not going to be able to because, again, if you're squeezing revenue that significantly, you're slashing the revenue that's available to the sector. That's not money that's going to be invested in, really novel, risky spaces where you don't have all the, pieces working in the way that we do in more established states like California. So if you're interested in taking a look at that based on your home state, again, 44 associations from 41 states and territories is pretty significant.
I had a question because I haven't seen anybody do this yet.
Yes.
The rare disease space is very, very diverse, as you talked about. Everything from family foundations to universities to emerging companies with venture capital behind them to mid-market, like Brent said, kind of the smaller companies, as well as then some larger pharmaceutical companies. I mean, it's very diverse. It's much more diverse than people realize.
Right.
And a lot of those companies don't control their overseas price. Did you do an analysis to show that if you're a smaller or an emerging company and you partner with a larger company that you don't control the price ex-US?
We did not in this study. There are other studies that kind of show what the different prices are in ex-US regions. We continue to get this question, or we hear this question about, well, can't you just raise, will there be some more gaming going on where you just raise your price internationally then to get a higher reference price that you could then import, to the U.S. or not decide not to launch there? And I mean, that is a reality that you might not launch in those states, in those countries. I don't think you can raise the price abroad, however, because we've seen that even happening now. The other countries are often take a very hard line on what price they want to pay, and they will, pay with patient access. They'll say, pay this price, or we're not, going to offer it in our country, or they're going to, engage in some anti-competitive behavior or things like, compulsory licensing. And we see that, and that has happened very recently. So I don't think you can increase your prices abroad, and I don't think that, we wouldn't want to not launch abroad either, but you wouldn't really want to launch here either.
There's also,
Go ahead.
this is Molly with CLSA. There's also a couple of reasons why you can't raise necessarily prices. For example, in Europe, there's a couple of regulations. One that allows people to bring a petition if a country thinks a drug is in the public interest and can take your patent and license it in the country. The other reason is this thing called the hospital exemption, which can allow hospitals, for example, like a CAR T therapy or CRISPR therapy, basically say like, oh, we're just going to kind of engineer this within our hospital. But there have been a lot of negative results from that, patient deaths, and there's also an issue of the results of those kind of like ad hoc engineering of drugs in hospitals. They don't have to report the outcomes, which is very concerning.
They're not subject to any kind of central regulatory agency. So they basically are manufacturing drugs and homebrew drugs and sidestepping the EU version of the FDA. We would not want to see that either. We're very over time. Yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry.
No, thank you to Jenny for joining us today. I'm going to turn it over to Becky Abbott with the National Foundation for Ectodermal Dysplasias. Becky, before you start, if anyone did have additional questions, please feel free on the phone line. You can always reach out to me, and I can connect to you with Jenny if you do have any questions. All right, take it away, Becky.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining. I just want to thank, again, RDLA for inviting me to speak today, and I'll make this quick just because we're running over. So I'm with the National Foundation for Ectodermal Dysplasias. I'm the Manager of Research and Treatment. In my emails on the slide, becky@nfed.org if you need to get a hold of me. Our organization is spearheading an advocacy initiative for the Ensuring Lasting Smiles Act. I'm I'll just give you a little bit of background as to why the Ensuring Lasting Smiles Act is needed. There's approximately 1 in 33 babies in the United States who are born with a congenital anomaly. Of those 120,000 children born with birth defects, approximately 40,000 of those will require reconstructive surgery to repair their congenital anomaly. Some of the birth defects include cleft lip, cleft palate, skin lesions, vascular anomalies, and then malformations of ear, hand, and foot, and craniofacial anomalies. Although medical professionals and surgeons are usually able to correct most of these problems, most of the time insurance companies come back, especially like with some craniofacial issues, saying that the procedures are either cosmetic or non-functional, and that's even when the treating physician determines that it is medically necessary. Next slide. So the Ensuring Lasting Smiles Act is federal legislation that would ensure that all private, group, and individual health plans would cover all medically necessary treatments, including dental procedures and oral treatments to repair any congenital anomalies. So that includes any part of the body. And it would also stipulate that the coverage would also include services to functionally repair or restore any missing or abnormal body part that is medically necessary to achieve either normal bodily function or appearance. And then it also clarifies or specifies that it includes any type of dental, orthodontic, prosthodontic support. And then it doesn't exclude cosmetic procedures and any type of cosmetic surgery. The Ensuring Lasting Smiles Act was originally introduced late last August, and then it was reintroduced this year during Rare Disease Week on February 26th. Senator Tammy Baldwin from Wisconsin and Senator Joni Ernst are two bill leads in the Senate, and the bill number is Senate Bill S-560 in the Senate. We currently have 37 Senate co-sponsors plus our bill lead, Senator Baldwin. In the House, we have 252 co-sponsors as of today, plus our bill lead, who is Colin Peterson. It was introduced by Representative Colin Peterson from Minnesota and Denver Riggleman from Virginia. Both bills have very strong bipartisan support in both the Senate and the House. And the bill is broad in scope, so it will include all congenital anomalies. It is not disease specific, and it includes congenital anomalies for any parts of the body. So we have a couple of calls to action. There are currently over 40 plus ELSA supporters and organizations who have signed on to a letter of support. If you'd be willing to, we're asking that any organizations who have not signed on will sign on to that letter of support, just so that we can share that with members of Congress to let them know there is strong backing for the bill. If you're meeting with any of your legislators, please ask them to sign on to co-sponsor ELSA. Recess is going to be coming up, so if anybody's meeting with them in district, that would be a great time to bring up this bill. We also have a Facebook group called the Ensuring Lasting Smiles Act Facebook group. It's for advocates, and you can join that as well to learn more about how you can help. And then we're also asking any patient organizations or any advocate to also reach out to their legislators if they have time. We're asking them to take a minute just to call their offices and ask them to co-sponsor, and then also email their legislators. If you don't know if your member is a co-sponsor, you can always look it up at congress.gov, or I can share that information with you. If you don't know who your health staffer is for your legislative office, you could also reach out to me too, and I can share that information with you. So just once again, here's the list of where you can find the Senate co-sponsors and the House co-sponsors. And like I mentioned before, we need your help. If you could just take a couple of minutes today and send a quick message to your legislator, that would be very helpful, and we would appreciate it. And that's all I have for you today, and have a happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you, Becky. Patricia?
Hi, Shannon. Thank you so much. And thank you, Becky. I remember our having a very nice conversation at Rare Disease Week in DC and comparing some notes. So I really appreciated your update. So we're discussing the Lymphedema Treatment Act. I've been a patient advocate since 2013, involved with the RDLA since 2015. This bill is now the #1 co-sponsored health care bill before Congress. It provides Medicare benefits to cover essential compression garments needed for the treatment of lymphedema, and these garments don't meet the current DME standards, so that's the reason why we have to take this to Congress. Next slide, please. Okay, so lymphedema is not a single disease. Primary lymphedema is classified as a rare disease, and there are more than 40 different types of rare lymphedema. Next slide, please. I'm trying to kind of rush because of the timing. So
you're fine, Patricia.
Okay. At any rate, so the bill was in this Congress. It was introduced in the Senate by Senator Maria Cantwell, who is a member of the Rare Disease Congressional Caucus, and in the House by Representative Jan Schakowsky, also a member of the Rare Disease Congressional Caucus. And as of today, we have 69 co-sponsors in the Senate, 360 in the House, and well over 85% of the Rare Disease Congressional Caucus in each chamber is co-sponsoring this bill. One time I was asked, how did we get all those numbers? So very quickly, I'm going to tell you, we got it through daily advocacy by volunteer, either patient advocates, or if I couldn't find a patient advocate in a district because it's a rare disease, sometimes you don't have that, I went to the therapists and the medical community and brought them into meetings at the district level. But this has all been done on a grassroots voluntary level. So I just wanted to put that in. Also, whenever I go to a meeting, whether it's in DC or at a district office, I always include the Rare Disease Congressional Caucus list. If the person is already on it, I thank them. If they're not on it, I encourage them to join. And especially if they have one of those legislative scores of like a B+, but I know that if they join the caucus, they could bump that up. I very much encourage them to join the caucus. So I just wanted to say thank you. So this is an extract from an analysis that was done by somebody on our board. And Becky, I noticed, I think that Elsa should be on this list given your numbers, so I'm going to bring that up to her. But those are our numbers, and we were also #1 at the end of the 115th caucus. For us, the challenge is to get it through the committee process, and we're working on that. Final slide, please. So I want to thank the LDA for so much support in many, many ways, and especially Rare Disease Week and Rare Voice Awards, just many, many ways that the RDLA has been great. You've been a wonderful partner in this effort, and we look forward to the Rare Disease Congressional Caucus briefing and the Rare Voice Awards on Wednesday, December 4th. Thank you.
Thanks, Patricia. You've set me up so nicely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill. As many of you know, it's coming up in, I believe, 14 weeks. Our countdown goes on our website. So Rare Disease Week will take place on February 25th to 28th here in Washington, D.C. As many of you know, it's an event for patients, caregivers, and advocates in the rare disease community. And of course, it's free for advocates to attend. Here's a list of our events. As many of you are familiar, we'll have a caucus briefing, documentary screening, and cocktail reception. And then the legislative conference on Wednesday, followed by a Hill Day and Rare Artist Reception on Thursday, and then the event at NIH Rare Disease Day will take place on Friday. Many of you already know the reasons why you should attend, but of course, your voice matters and is extremely important, and so I encourage everyone who can or wants to attend. I would really like to share with you about the travel stipends available through Rare Giving and encourage you to spread the word about this. We do provide a limited number of travel stipends to offset the cost of traveling to DC, and advocates receive $1,000 in Alaska, Hawaii, North Dakota, Puerto Rico. Marylanders and Virginians receive $400, and then the rest of the U.S. receive $800. And our travel stipend application is open now on our website until December 2nd, so you have less than 2 weeks to get your application in if you haven't yet. Here's some of the small print related to the travel stipends. We can only give one per family. Any young adults who apply need to be traveling with a chaperone, an adult chaperone. We prioritize the stipends by state and by disease to have a wide variety of diseases represented and to ensure that all 50 states are represented. And of course, stipend recipients must attend the legislative conference on the 26th and then the Hill Day on the 27th. But this is where you all come in to help spread the word. These states with stars on them are actually states where we haven't received very many applications. So if you know other rare disease patients, caregivers living in these states, it would be great for you to pass along the information regarding the travel stipends for Rare Disease Week and encourage them to apply. We have 0 applications from Hawaii, North Dakota, and Wyoming, only 1 from South Dakota and Vermont, 2 from Iowa and Montana, 3 from Alaska, Idaho, New Mexico, and West Virginia, and 4 from Maine. So we want to make sure all 50 states are represented during Rare Disease Week, so please help spread the word for us. And of course, your chances of getting a travel stipend are much higher in these states. The numbers are working for you, so hopefully we get a few more applications for all 50 states, including these. And here's some important dates. The travel stipend application closes on December 2nd. We'll have our first Rare Disease Week webinar on the 12th of December. And you'll hear from us whether you have received a travel stipend or have been placed on the wait list by December 20th so that you can finalize your travel plans. And then registration will open on January 2nd. So that's it for me on Rare Disease Week. We'll hold our first webinar on Rare Disease Week on the 12th, and then our next monthly RDLA webinar will be held on January 16th in 2020. And of course, as always, if there's any topic you'd like to be presented on or you would like to present on, please just contact me and let me know. Thank you so much to everyone. We made it in under the 1 hour mark. So we were very successful. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me as well, and I can direct them to our speakers. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you all.